Welcome back to the I Am Passionate podcast. I'm your host, Jaren Smith, and we've got only 3 weeks left in the regular season until the playoffs, and the race it's insane. It is super close, which I feel like this year compared to years past, we don't know. Like other years past, like the Eagles at this point in the year last year, they, were on their crazy win streak. Teams like Kansas City, were, high up, in the standings, the Ravens, the Bills, and then right now this season, the Broncos and the Patriots are competing for the one seed in the AFC. The Bears, Seattle, the Rams, they all have a chance to get the number one seed, and the Packers all have a chance to get the number one seed in the NFC. This year's playoffs is just so unpredictable because teams this season are just so much more up and down. So I don't know. It truly is just going to be who avoids that this term is more associated with college football games, trap games. The number one seed is up for grabs. And just to think about it this week, from this past week, the Bears were literally the number one seed, this Sunday. And because they lost to the Packers, they fell all the way down to the number 7 seed. And it is just insane. And to talk about my top games in week 14, in all honesty, all of these games are pretty interchangeable. Packers versus Bears. Well, actually, it would be Bears versus Packers. The Bears versus the Packers. They showed they can compete with the Packers. They really did. But I think their offense just needs to get out to a faster start. I think that, you can't rely all the time on, coming out strong in the second half to, be able to, apply the pressure. And the thing is, they were still very, very close to winning, which I think gives, Bears players and, the, fans, some hope because they were very, very close to at least taking that game into overtime. Second game, and also Jordan Love, he's been playing really, really well right now, and I think that the Packers season will be defined about how he finishes the season, how far he takes them. The second game to talk about is the Bills versus the Bengals. The Bills are always playing in some sort of snow game, man, always. And I kind of thought the Bengals were going to, control the game because I think they had a 21-10 lead at the half. The Bills defense, came alive, which they didn't really do anything. They really only had to make one play. I would say it's more accurate to maybe say that Josh Allen just clutched up. He put the team on his back. And I wasn't necessarily expecting a shootout only because of the weather. And yeah, no, this was just insane. But now the Bengals' room for error is pretty much zero. Next on the list is the Steelers versus Ravens. Everyone has been talking about the Isaiah Likely play, which the thing is, a lot of people, which, I'm not going to get into specific conversations that I've had. And when I first saw the play in live time, I thought it was a touchdown. But, based off the rules, you have to get 2 steps and make a football move. And the thing is, Isaiah Likely, when he made that catch, his hands were kind of already extended, which was not the smartest thing in the world, but that's not necessarily a football move. And also, literally as he was beginning the third step of, the football move sort of thing, the ball got knocked out. I'm going to applaud the Steelers defender, which I believe it was Joey Porter. That was an amazing defensive play. The thing that would make me more mad about, the Steelers and Ravens game was the drop Rashad Bateman had. I think it was on 3rd and short when he basically was running a crossing route. It was wide open. If he didn't get the touchdown, he was going to get the first down. But, I think he's skilled enough to make, one defender missed. And so, basically in the second half, the Ravens settled for 2 field goals. If Rashad Bateman doesn't get that drop and they get a touchdown, it's an entirely different game, going down the stretch. Now, I understand that if Rashad Bateman scores a touchdown there, the Steelers can come back and respond with a touchdown. I understand that. But, yeah, no, I think that drop upset me way, way more. It really, really did. And also, Daniel Flele, he needs to get off the Ravens. I don't think I've seen him have one good block this entire season. I really don't think I have. I really don't. And the Steelers, they looked good. They had the vertical passing game, something that, the announcers were saying in the entire month of November. They have not had a single pass, basically over 20 yards. And, yeah, I think they had 3 or 4 do that, which is insane. But, hey, it is what it is. And, talking about, next, the Titans versus Browns. Yeah, Kevin Stefanski, Browns head coach, he needs to go. I understand that the Browns have had success running the Wildcat in the red zone, but Shedeur Sanders had his best game as an NFL quarterback. He literally threw you the game, the touchdown to, get it to within reach. Not even basically 1 minute before. And then, you just take the ball out of his hands and you have, just a whack Wildcat trick play. Why? That was a horrible play call. Shedeur Sanders, he balled out. He balled out. I think that if he continues to impress, I think that Shedeur Sanders, give him a chance, with the full, off-season training camp, potentially adding some more weapons on offense, they could ball out. And then 5, Texans versus Chiefs. I've been saying how good the Texans defense is, but I really did not expect them to get 3 interceptions on Patrick Mahomes. Now, I understand that Travis Kelce dropped one, and that ended up being in his third. And then there was one that a Texans player got the deflection on. It was, I think, Jalen Petrie, number 5, and then he caught his own deflection. So, really, in all honesty, I can't remember that Jalen Petrie one if it was just an amazing play by the defender. But I remember that second one. I think it was Kamari Lassiter who got that interception. That was the only one where it was kind of like a boneheaded move. But I don't see the Chiefs making the playoffs this year. I never thought I would say that. And the thing is, it's the offense that just cannot get things going. I think their defense has kept them in games, but, the offense, they just cannot do as much. And then, my prediction for last week's games, I was 7-7. Got wins through the Texans, the Chargers, Miami, the Broncos, the Rams, the Bills, and Seattle. And my losses came from the Cowboys, the Browns, the Colts, the Commanders, the Ravens, the Bears, and the Bucks. So to talk about, this week's games, on Thursday night, we have the Falcons versus the Bucks, and I'm not really looking forward to this game. The Bucks fell off dramatically this season. I thought Baker Mayfield was going to be the MVP, but I think it's a race between either Drake May or Matt Stafford, and I think depending, how Drake May finishes up the season, I think it's Drake May's award to lose, so to speak. And, the Falcons, we know that they're eliminated from playoffs and they've got a difficult offseason ahead. I've talked about in the past that they don't even have their first round pick. And I think they need to address a lot of things, starting with their head coach. I don't think Raheem Morris is a good head coach. I think he's a good coordinator. I don't think he's a good head coach. Give me the Bucks to win this game Thursday night, 23-16. Moving on to the game that most of you are probably looking forward to me to talk about, the Ravens versus the Bengals. This is a must-win from both teams. The Bengals are not officially eliminated yet because the AFC North leader could still make the playoffs with an 8-9 record. The Bengals have, they've done really, really well in AFC North football this year. And yeah, they cannot afford to lose a single game because I imagine if they lose this game, the Bengals season, I imagine, is over. The Ravens, they have looked horrible in their last 2 games. Their offense has been so self-destructive. And it's just been insane. And, they just do not even look like the team they were just a season ago. And I think a huge part of that is the offensive line has just been significantly worse. And I think that the Ravens, they're 6-7. Go ahead and type 6-7 in the comments. This game is going to dictate the rest of the. This is the most important game for the Ravens season. If they lose this game, I believe that they will miss the playoffs. Because they still have to play the Patriots. They still have to play Green Bay. They still have to play the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Most of their games are on the road to end the season. That is why I'm like, I don't think the Ravens will make the playoffs if they lose this game. I think if they lose this game, they're done. Because at least if they win, they'll have at least a small room for error, but not much. The Ravens have to win their final 4 games if they want to make the playoffs. And I think for this game, what I want to see, because I don't think the Bengals can defend this. I want to see Lamar Jackson run the read option a little bit more. I want to see that threat because they were doing it a little bit against the Steelers and it was working, but they did not do it consistently. I'm gonna take the Ravens to win this one 31-30. I think the defense is going to be, PO'd, their performance against the Bengals on Thanksgiving. And I think the offense is going to step up, because they easily could have beaten the Bengals on Thanksgiving, but 5 turnovers. You're going to lose a football game almost every time if you turn the ball over 5 times. So moving on to the Raiders versus the Eagles. Even though the Eagles have been looking bad, I think that they're going to beat the Raiders pretty easy. And the Eagles, they're in such a weird spot where I still think they're going to win their division, but I don't think they're going to really go all that far in the playoffs. Give me the Eagles to win this game 27-7. Moving on to the Cardinals versus the Texans. I think the Texans are a team that nobody wants to play in the playoffs simply just because they have a very good defense. And, their offense is looking better each week. And, the Cardinals, I think they're in an awkward position where I think they're going to clean house. I think they are going to get rid of their head coach. I think they're going to get rid of potentially Kyler Murray, whether they release him or they trade him. I think they're going to just start over. Give me the Texans to win this game 24-7. Chargers versus Chiefs. The other game I was thinking that most of you are probably excited for me to talk about. The Chiefs' playoff lives are on the line here. I cannot tell you, when I've been scrolling on TikTok to seeing how many sports content creators are like, oh, the Chiefs are about to run the table. The Chiefs are going to make the playoffs. It's easier than people think. No, I think they're done. I think they're Coke butter cheese done. I think their schedule, because, they have to play the Chargers. They have to play the Broncos one more time. And I believe they still have to play the Raiders one more time, which I get it. The Raiders are not that good, but if the Chiefs somehow make the miracle situation of, they just have to beat the Raiders and they're in, the Raiders, they might try to, play spoiler. I know the Raiders and Kansas City do not like each other, so that's a game that could end in the Raiders' favor, which I get it. It's crazy for me to even say that. The Chargers offense, they did not play all that well against the Eagles Monday night, but they kind of got lucked out because Jalen Hurts looked way worse. I mean, he had, I believe, 5 turnovers, which is just insane. Give me the Chargers to win this one against the Chiefs 28-20, putting an end to the Chiefs' playoff hopes. Moving on to the Bills versus the Patriots. This is an important game in the AFC East. The Bills can still win the division, but they need a lot of things to go their way. They need to win this game and hope the Patriots probably lose a couple of games. But I don't know, because I think the Patriots have an easier schedule than the Bills do. And the Bills, I think they need to focus on running the football in this game. I don't think I trust the Bills defense to stop the Patriots for a whole game. I don't think I do. And, the Patriots don't really have much to say about them because last time they played was about 2 weeks ago against the Giants on Monday Night Football. But I'm actually going to take the Bills to win this game here, 27-23. I think they're going to make things more interesting to see. I think the AFC East is going to go down to the wire. Moving on to the Jets versus Jags. I don't have too much to say about this game in general, besides for the Jags are in first place, and they need to keep racking up wins because the Texans are breathing down the Jaguars' neck. And also, something I was aware of, but I didn't talk about in my last podcast episode, because last week, the Colts played the Jags in Jacksonville. The Colts have not won in Jacksonville since 2014. That is insane. But give me the Jags to beat the Jets 28-13. Commanders versus Giants. Both these teams are already eliminated from the playoffs. I don't think there's going to be too much interest here unless you're a personal fan of these teams. And, last night, I was talking with my brother and Kevin about if we were to become a head coach, what team would we want to be the head coach for? And I think Kevin and my brother kind of had a mutual vibe of hey, Giants head coaching position might not be as bad. I said the Titans because, they have the most cap space in the NFL. And I think that if they draft well, it'll probably lure some free agents there. But that's enough about that. But the Giants do have an interesting situation there. And the Commanders, their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, I think he needs to put on some muscle in the offseason. I think he needs to. Because I think that he would not be as, at risk for injuries like he has been this season. And also, I think the Commanders just need to sit him. I don't think he should have played last week because, I think that, one bad hit and you're basically back to, square one, aka you're injured. I think he needs to put on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. I don't think that's going to affect his throwing motion all that much. And I think that, defenders, they're too good at, basically like pass rushers are just so insanely good. So that like whether he's, running the, read option or he's in the pocket, I think he's just at risk of getting hurt in general. Like, I don't think he's a risky player. I think that he plays relatively safe, and this has just been a bad year for the Commanders. But I do still think he needs to put on some muscle. Give me the Commanders to win this game 28-27. Browns versus the Bears. The Bears, talked about it a little bit earlier. They had a great second half against the Packers, and they were very close to be able to tie the game. And I believe that the last play of the game was the same play that the Bears ran against the Eagles with that Cole Kmet touchdown. And the thing is, from what I saw, it did look kind of open. It just looked like Caleb Williams saw it a little too late. And the Bears, they have a chance to still win their division. They've got to keep stacking up some wins. And then obviously, to end the season, they've got to beat the Packers. So, the Browns, I already talked about Kevin Stefanski. Shedeur Sanders had an amazing game. He had over 350 passing yards. I think he had 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing. He had an amazing game last week. And I think the key to this game will be if the Bears can slow down Myles Garrett. And I think that they will have a good game plan for Myles Garrett, but Myles Garrett is also just insane. Give me the Bears to win this one 23-17. Moving on to the Panthers versus the Saints. The Panthers can keep the pressure on the Buccaneers, which I think they will. If I was them, I would run the football a lot. Rely on Rico Dowdle, rely on Chuba Hubbard. I say that just because I feel like there's been a cycle this year with the Panthers where, Bryce Young will play a bad game and people will question if Bryce Young is the guy. Then the following game, the second game, then maybe he'll have a horrible start, but then he'll clutch up and play amazing. And then he'll have one game in that cycle where he'll just play amazing from start to finish. So I think I would run the football because I also believe that playoff teams to make it to the Super Bowl, I think you have to have that threat of a ground game, which that's not entirely true, but having that ground game, I think makes the difference on if you can actually win the Super Bowl or not. And the Saints, they picked up a big win last week over the Bucs, which I did not expect. And do I think they can do it pull off another upset 2 weeks in a row? Only reason I'm gonna say maybe is because they are the home team, and the Panthers do not play as well on the road. I am going to pick the Panthers to win this game 24-10 because I think the Panthers supporting cast will help out and make the job easier for the Panthers offense. Moving on to the Lions versus the Rams. I think this is the game of the week right here. The last few times they matched up I think once in the playoffs. Actually, I think they matched up twice in the playoffs. Please correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments below. But they've played amazing the last few times that they've matched up. And the Lions, they had a big Thursday night win over the Cowboys, which I did not know that they have not lost back-to-back games in basically the last 4 or 5 years. But I think they're likely going to try to rely on Jahmyr Gibbs, against the Lions again, Jahmyr Gibbs against the Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs against the Rams again, because it makes sense. And the Rams offense, they exploded against the Cardinals. Puka Nacua had a great game, and I think that this game could be a shootout. I'm going to take the Rams to win this one 34-30 because the Lions have been too up and down this season. Moving on to the Colts versus Seattle. Phillip Rivers, the Chargers quarterback, for most of his career. He played on the Colts last in 2020 during the pandemic season. He's 44 years old and he's coming out of retirement for the Colts to play quarterback because, Daniel Jones had that injury last week, his Achilles, which that could be career altering. And, Anthony Richardson is on IR with, his, fractured orbital bone. And Riley Leonard, I believe, got hurt. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to, go back and check. But do I think the Colt season is cooked? I definitely do. I'm sorry. I don't think Phillip Rivers is going to save them. I don't. He might be able to at least, if they make the playoffs at this point, that would be insane. Phillip Rivers coming off the street, having not having to play football basically within the last 5 years. It's insane. It is insane. It really is. I do not think he's gonna. I think against Seattle, I think Seattle is going to, BTA. And Seattle, I think they're one of the top teams in this league, and I think their offense, because last week against the Falcons, it was a 6-6 game at half. Then Rashid Shaheed, got a kick return, which pretty much opened the floodgates. And I think their offense has the chance to put up another similar game, this upcoming, Sunday. But we will see. Give me Seattle to win this one 31-17. Only a couple of games left. Let me know what you all are thinking about some of my takes down below. And if I was to talk a little bit about fantasy football real quick before we talk about the Panthers versus Broncos. So, yeah, on the Sleeper app, yeah, my team is done. We're 4-10. I was done a couple weeks ago. Like, in that league, I had kind of lost my confidence. Because like literally to my friend Cameron, I lost by less than 1 point. And like after that, I'm like, the losing streak just continued. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm cooked. I am cooked. But in the other league on the NFL Fantasy, at which I have to win the final game. I'm 9-5. I have to win the final game to make it into the playoffs, just because the playoff race is close. And with point 4 being a tiebreaker, yeah, with the only other team that could potentially steal a playoff spot from me, I'm not win the points for tiebreaker. So it is very possible that somebody with a, let's just say, 9-6 record could be snubbed. But enough about that. We're gonna talk about the Panthers, the Packers versus the Broncos, and this is a big game for both sides. The Broncos, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, they're trying to lock up that number 1 seed, which the Packers are trying to extend their lead over the Bears for the division. And both of these teams are up and down to me, and I think that this is a game where it's very possible that both teams kind of play slow, but then wake up in the second half. But I'm going to pick the Packers to win this game to try to make things a little more interesting. I think, the Broncos will kind of choke away the potential 1 seed opportunity. I think the Packers will win this game 20-17. Moving on to the Titans versus the 49ers. The 49ers could look to improve their seeding if Seattle loses this game and they basically win this game. I am surprised that this game is a 3:25 p.m. game, which that's Central Time. Because I think that this is a better noon game, and I think if I was to slot a different game here, I would consider probably putting the Bills versus Patriots at that 3:30 slot. The Chargers versus Chiefs, Ravens Bengals. I would consider putting either one of those games there, personally. But I'm going to take the 49ers to win this one pretty easily, 31-10. And so then now for the final game to talk about before the Monday Night Football game, we have the Vikings versus the Cowboys. Here's my question. Can J.J. McCarthy put together 2 good games in a row? He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He didn't have a lot of yards. He only had about 160. But that's easily the best game he's had all season. This is must win for both teams because the Cowboys lost the Lions last week, and the Cowboys are trying to catch up to the Eagles. And they still have a chance, but they have to win out to even have a chance. I'm going to take the Cowboys to win this one 30-21, and I think the Vikings' postseason hopes are going to end Sunday night. And for the final game of the week, Monday Night Football, the Dolphins versus the Steelers. The Dolphins have come back. By that, I mean they were like 1-6 at the start, and now they're 6-7. That's the last time you're going to hear me say 6-7 on this podcast, if it can be controlled. But they are 6-7. I just realized I just did it. Okay, that is the last time that I will say, their record like that. But we know their record. The Steelers, they're 7-6 after their win over the Baltimore Ravens. And I think that this could be a really good Monday Night Football game. I think that Devon Achane has been playing amazing, and he should easily be the most untouchable piece on the entire Miami Dolphins roster. Easily. In the Steelers, I think this late in the year, their goal should be consistency, because if they stay consistent, I think that they can, actually win the AFC North, despite most of the world having thought the Ravens would win this division, even when they were 1-5. But I think the Steelers are going to win this game 24-21. I think it's going to be close, and I think that they're going to keep applying that pressure to make it even more tough for the Ravens to win the division. That's all I have for the Week 15 episode of the I Am Passionate podcast. It's your host, Jaren Smith, and I'll see you all next time.